So the Pokemon community was thrown into an absolute frenzy yesterday when Pokemon Legends Arceus was announced for the Nintendo Switch in the Pokemon Presents presentation. This is a game unlike any other Pokemon game before it that is going to be set in the past of the Sinnoh region and is going to be the first true open world Pokemon game that we've ever got the chance to play. While the trailer was absolutely hype-inducing, which by the way, if you haven't seen my reaction, you can do so right here, there was only a small amount of gameplay that was shown off. However, with that being said, there were still a lot of interesting things to glean from it naturally, and that is going to be the subject of today's video as we look at some interesting details from the Pokemon Legends Arceus reveal trailer that you may have missed. Starting off with our first one, this is admittedly something that has been picked up by a lot of people, but I also think it's really worth mentioning because it's a small detail, but it's a really big deal at the same time. When we see the starter Pokemon for this game, who consist of Cyndaquil, Rowlet, and Oshawott, there's something special going on with Cyndaquil, and that's that he actually has his flames on his back. If you have not noticed recently, as of Generation 6 when Pokemon went to 3D, all of Cyndaquil's family members lost their flames in their idle animations, meaning their flames only showed up for a brief second when they were attacking another Pokemon, and that just made them look way more plain and not as good as the older games because the flames are obviously their signature feature. So it's amazing to see Cyndaquil and then presumably the rest of its family done right and fixed by having their flames out when they are just standing around. This next one is one that is really interesting, and it may mean something or it may mean nothing, but it's certainly a good piece of speculation. The player characters of this game, who very closely resemble Lucas and Dawn from the modern Sinnoh games, are wearing these jacket kimono-like things, and on these jackets on the arm, we can see this unique looking symbol that seems to be somewhat important, but it also seems to be somewhat familiar as well. While being unique and very much its own thing, it also very distinctly resembles the Team Galactic logo, both in general shape as well as color. Now this is obviously immensely interesting for a number of different reasons, and even though it could ultimately amount to nothing and have nothing to do with Team Galactic, it is at the very least worth keeping an eye on as we continue to learn more about this game, and who knows, maybe it has something to do with the story and a connection to Team Galactic is actually present after all. Another interesting thing to do with this symbol that's very easy to miss in the trailer is the fact that it actually appears in what seems to be the professor's house and or laboratory. When we see the shot of Cyndaquil, Rowlet, and Oshawott, the three starters of this game, we can peer into the office, it seems like, of this professor character, and he has two flags in this office that have the same symbol that are on the arms of the jackets of the player characters. We learn, thanks to the description of the trailer, that the professor is essentially employing you, it seems like, to put together Sinnoh's very first Pokedex. So this symbol likely means that you are essentially being employed by the professor as a member of his team or working for him as an employee even. Now this makes a lot of sense given what your role is in the game, but given the possible connection to Team Galactic, who might this professor character actually be? And what role could he have in the story? Once again, very speculative, but certainly worth keeping an eye on. Another very noteworthy thing from this trailer that people are still very much scratching their heads about is indeed the starter selection in this game. Not only are the starters in this game not Sinnoh Pokemon, even though we're in the Sinnoh region, each of them come from a different generation, which is a completely new thing that we have never seen happen in Pokemon before. However, even though the Sinnoh starters are not the starters in this Sinnoh-based game, we do see in the trailer that every single one of them appear in the wild and are catchable in this way. Not only is that amazing considering you can catch a starter Pokemon in the wild, but it's also very intriguing as well, and it'll be interesting to see if there's any development involving these Pokemon and their eventual role as starter Pokemon like we know in the modern Sinnoh games. Now, of the shots of gameplay that we see in this trailer, even though we get several of them, they all seem to be located within the same general area, and there's a possibility that we might be able to pinpoint where exactly this area is in Sinnoh. Even though the region obviously looks completely different to what we know in the modern day, there is one good landmark that we can use as a point of reference, and that would of course be Mount Coronet. And in this screenshot, we see Mount Coronet behind the female player character, in a time that seems to be the morning, given the fact that the sun is clearly behind Mount Coronet, and the sky seems to indicate that the sun is rising rather than setting. Since the sun obviously rises in the east, that would mean that this female player character is on the west side of Mount Coronet, which would roughly put her in a position of somewhere in the Floaromatown, Jubilife City area of the region. And you know what? This is actually corroborated by the Badoo who is standing right behind her, a Pokemon that can be found in the tall grass just outside of Jubilife City. Going back to the starters that I just mentioned, as I said, many people are confused as to why we are getting starters that are not only not Sinnoh starters, but are from 3 different generations. I personally think the concept is fascinating and awesome, but it does beg the question exactly why these individual starters were chosen to be a part of a trio. And while once again this is only speculation on my part, it very much does seem to be the case that they are meant to coincide with the Japanese, early Japanese feel that the game is going for. We obviously see very Japanese-centric outfits on the player characters, and so naturally it would only make sense that the starters would reflect this theme as well. It's very clear to see that in Oshawott with it evolving into a samurai-based Pokemon in Samurott, with Rowlet eventually evolving into an archer in Decidueye. It's not necessarily completely Japanese, but I think it is the most Japanese-esque of any of the grass starters, and same goes for Cyndaquil. It seems to have the most Japanese flavor, if you will, of all of the other fire starters, with the only exceptions being Torchic and Tepig, I would think. And with Tepig being a Unova Pokemon, that kind of excludes it since we already have Oshawott in the lineup, and with Torchic being a bird just like Rowlet, that kind of excludes it as well, which would make Cyndaquil the only natural choice if this is indeed the kind of theme that they are going for. In one of the shots that we got to see from the Pokemon Presents presentation, we got a very brief look of the female player character in a forest. Now, it could be the case that this is Eterna Forest, seeing as how that is the only major forest in the Sinnoh region, but it's hard to say with the region looking so vastly different. However, that is not necessarily what I wanted to cover here. What I wanted to cover here are the ruins that we can see behind the female player character. It seems to be the case that there are some structural ruins of some kind, and they very, very heavily resemble the pillars and the architecture that we see at the Spear Pillar in the modern Diamond and Pearl. This leads me to believe, especially because the game revolves around Arceus, that this is going to tie into the story of the game, and this area is going to be very important as it relates to the plot. With this game being as wild and out of left field as it is, one can only guess what that could entail for the story, but I am very interested to find out for myself. There's also another instance where we can possibly pick out a familiar landmark in Sinnoh, and that would come from another brief screenshot where we see the male player character running up a hill. Now, if you look behind him, you can see a lake, and of course we know the Sinnoh region is known for its lakes, with Lake Verity, Lake Acuity, and Lake Valor, each of them making up some of the most important landmarks in the entire Sinnoh region. Even though this past version of Sinnoh is wildly different geographically thanks to its more primitive nature, I would not be surprised at all if the 3 lakes do indeed make an appearance. And this lake that we see behind the male player character could possibly be one of them. And last but not least is something that you may or may not want to see, because it involves spoilers if you can believe it. Now, right before the Pokemon Presents presentation where this game was revealed, a leak occurred that actually correctly showed the game and various screenshots, including some that were not shown in the reveal trailer. Now, because this leak absolutely nailed with 100% accuracy everything that was shown in the reveal, it can be assumed to be true. So with that being said, if you don't want to be spoiled in any way, I would skip this part of the video. However, I will personally say that these things are pretty minor in nature and aren't much of a spoiler. So proceed at your own risk, but I personally don't think it's that big of a deal. Anyways, one of the screenshots shown that we do not see in the reveal trailer seems to show the player character going up against what very much looks like an overworld boss, very reminiscent of Breath of the Wild, which isn't a surprise considering this game is obviously very much Breath of the Wild inspired. It even has a health bar at the top of the screen, much like those same bosses from Breath of the Wild, and while it's really hard to tell what Pokemon this could possibly be, the seemingly confirmation of bigger Pokemon overworld bosses in this game is just another phenomenal feature because it's going to very much add to the overall variety of gameplay and the fun of exploration and adventure that is going to be had within this world. Next up is a trio of screenshots, and these screenshots are as exciting as they are mysterious, because in each one of them, they show a mysterious silhouette-like figure that seems to be maybe somewhat of a feature that we will see introduced later on. Aside from that piece of mystery, however, it confirms some very exciting things. Namely, it seems to confirm that riding Pokemon in the overworld is going to be a thing, as we see that essentially occurring with one of the silhouette characters, and it seems that climbing, just like in Breath of the Wild, is also going to be a thing, which is just going to add to the exploration and adventure and is going to make for a phenomenal experience. Thirdly, we also see a bird Pokemon seemingly carrying the player character or something else as well. This could very likely be another mode of transport just like the riding Pokemon, and maybe it's the equivalent to Fly, the HM, just in this new overworld open world setting. We're just gonna have to wait and see what these mysterious silhouettes entail, but they just add to the hype of the game in my opinion. And there you have it. Those were some interesting details that I noticed in the Pokemon Legends reveal trailer that you may not have noticed. Did you notice any of these yourself, and what do you think of them? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to tell me if there's anything you noticed as well. You can also be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, it really helps out the channel, and to also support the channel, you can listen to my Pokemon remixes on Spotify, and check out my Pokemon Cardinal project here on YouTube. That makes a massive difference, and just helps me to keep doing what I'm doing for you guys all the time. With that being said, I'll be back very soon with another video, and until then, as always, I love you guys, and I will smell you guys later.